Dense fog clung to the village like a living shroud, wrapping Nyamirambo in its cold, damp fingers. The hills surrounding the settlement were blackened ridges under a silver moon, mist curling around jagged roots and whispering in the cracks between twisted trees. Latifah lay on a straw mat in her hut, staring at the ceiling as the fire sputtered low. Her younger brother, Kazi, slept nearby, his soft breaths barely disturbing the thin mat beneath him. But even in the quiet, the air felt wrong, thicker, heavier, almost watchful. Outside, the wind rattled the walls of the hut and carried soft whispers. Latifah froze. The whispers were faint, like dry leaves scraping across a mud wall, but unmistakably human. A voice, familiar yet strange, slithered into her ears. "Latifah." She bolted upright, gripping the wooden charm above her hearth, a crudely carved figure her grandmother once claimed could repel spirits. But as she reached the door, the night was still. Nothing but mist and the distant rustle of acacia leaves. Relief was brief. A shadow shifted unnaturally at the edge of the hut. It bent backwards, its knees bending wrong, limbs long and thin. Latifah's heart hammered in her chest. She barely dared to breathe as the figure stepped forward. The moonlight revealed the impossible truth. It was Kazi, yet not. His eyes were too dark, too hollow, and the smile that spread across his face was just slightly wrong. "Kazi!" Her voice trembled. No response. The figure tilted its head backward unnaturally, whispering, "Come, play with me." Latifah stumbled back, knocking over a clay pot. It shattered on the floor, scattering shards that caught the firelight. When she dared look again, he was gone. Only the mist remained, curling around the hut like a serpent. The next morning, the village buzzed with unease. Children were missing from neighboring huts. Shadows seemed to shift unnaturally along the paths. Elder Nyaru noticed Latifah pacing near the river, eyes haunted. "You saw it," he said quietly, almost accusingly. "The Nyoka moves among us. It wears the face of those we love. Fear it not, but know it watches through the eyes of trust betrayed." Latifah's hands trembled. "But, Kazi, you must not assume he is gone," Nyara warned. "It imitates perfectly, yet its heart is hollow. Only your courage and wit can see the difference. Only the forest holds the truth." The night returned, blacker than before. Latifah placed protective charms around the hut, lit incense, and murmured ancestral chants. Outside, the wind whispered again, mocking her attempts. Shadows danced on the walls like living things. A faint tapping sounded at the window. She looked up, and the reflection staring back at her was Kazi. But his eyes glimmered green, and his smile stretched wider than possible. She seized her lantern and ran outside. Every familiar path twisted beneath the fog, trees leaning toward her as if to trap her. At the riverbank a figure appeared. Kazi, standing perfectly still, staring at her. Relief surged, but the reflection in the water revealed another face behind his, teeth sharper than any human's. The second figure lunged from the puddle, its grin widening beyond reality, and Latifah stumbled back, realizing the Nyoka was already inside her perception. The sun rose sluggishly over Nyamirambo, casting weak light through a mist still clinging stubbornly to the hills. Latifah's sleep had been haunted, fractured by whispers and fleeting visions. Kazi's grin twisting impossibly, shadows folding into shapes that mimicked her family. Even in the bright haze of morning, the memory made her shiver. Elder Nyaru waited near the riverbank, hunched over a bundle of charms and scrolls tied with animal sinew. His hands shook as he traced the ancient markings, murmuring words older than the village itself. "The Nyoka is no ordinary spirit," he warned. It is born of betrayal, of broken trust, and the weakening of blood ties. Cannot be reasoned with. Feeds on doubt. And now, it seeks Kazi. Latifah's chest tightened. Her gaze swept over the misty riverbanks, half expecting Kazi, or the Nyoka in his form, to appear at any moment. She noticed a ripple in the water, though the air was still. Her brother's reflection winked before the surface returned to normal. "You must confront it," Nyara continued, voice low but urgent. "Only in the ancestral forest, when the veil is thinnest at midnight, can it be forced to show its true form. Take these charms and the incense. Burn them in a circle, call the spirits, and remember, trust your instincts, not your eyes." Latifah took the items, feeling the weight of history and fear pressing into her palms. The forest loomed beyond the village, thick with twisted roots, gnarled trees, and the low hum of insects that sounded like whispered warnings. Every step toward the edge made her chest pound. She could feel the air growing heavier, almost alive. As night fell, she stepped into the ancestral forest. Mist coiled around her feet, licking her skin like cold fingers. The path was uneven, roots catching her sandals, branches clawing at her hair. She lit the incense, watching as smoke curled upward into faintly glowing symbols. The Nyoka was here. She could feel its presence, a suffocating pressure, like the forest itself exhaling dread. A figure emerged. Kazi, perfectly still, face pale in the moonlight. Relief warred with suspicion. His eyes were familiar, yet she remembered Nyara's warning. She raised the charms. The figure froze. Then the grin twisted, stretching into something unnatural. Limbs bent backward, his body folding like paper. He lunged and in an instant vanished into mist. A low hiss echoed from every direction. Shadows along the trees stretched toward her, forming shapes that were almost human, but wrong. Limbs too long, heads tilting impossibly, and faces flickering between familiarity and monstrous distortion. Latifah gripped the charms tighter, her palms slick with sweat. She recited the ancestral chants, each syllable trembling but steady. The Nyoka responded in kind, whispering voices from all sides. She heard Kazi's laughter, their mother's voice, even the voice of a cousin long dead. Each spoke truths twisted to torment her. "You abandoned him. You cannot save him. He is mine now." The fog thickened, pressing against her chest, and the drumbeats began. Not the protective ones she carried, but low, mocking rhythms from nowhere, matching the pace of her pounding heart. Suddenly, a shadow coalesced before her. A second Kazi stepping backward, mimicking every move she made. Her instincts screamed danger. She swung the charm, and smoke erupted, forming a protective barrier shimmering faintly under the moonlight. The Nyoka shrieked, a sound like wind tearing through bones, and for a moment silence fell. Latifah pressed on, deeper into the forest. The mist twisted, forming a corridor of shadows, and every step seemed to stretch the distance, the path lengthening unnaturally. The trees leaned closer, as if alive, whispering secrets she did not want to hear. Shapes flickered along the periphery. Humans, animals, figures that belonged neither to the living nor the dead. At the center of the clearing, the ground was littered with remnants of old rituals. Broken bone charms, scorched symbols, and dried herbs. Drums, unseen, vibrated through the soil. The air smelled of smoke, decaying leaves, and something coppery like blood. And there, standing beneath the tallest tree, was Kazi again. He looked normal. Relief washed over Latifah, but instinct warned her, and she remembered Nyara's words. Trust instincts, not eyes. Slowly she approached. The ground beneath her seemed to pulse, and the shadows stretched toward her feet, forming grotesque hands. Then it happened. Kazi's face flickered, shifting into a grinning mask of bone and sinew, eyes glowing green for a heartbeat. Latifah's stomach turned, and she fell backward, clutching the charms to her chest. The smoke from the incense swirled violently, forming a protective circle that shimmered in spectral light. The Nyoka hissed again, a cacophony of all the voices it had imitated surrounding her. Latifah realized in horror. This was no longer just one shapeshifter. The forest itself had become its body. Every shadow, every distorted reflection, every flicker in the mist was part of it. It had trapped her. A sudden gust of wind blew the incense out, plunging her into darkness. When the light returned, Kazi, or the Nyoka in his form, was standing right behind her, smiling wide, backward, walking with a pace too smooth to be human. Latifah's scream echoed into the mist as everything went black. Latifah woke on the forest floor, damp leaves clinging to her skin, the morning mist seeping into every fold of her clothes. Her breath came in ragged gasps. She was alone, at least she thought she was. The air was heavy with the scent of earth, smoke, and something metallic, coppery. Every instinct screamed danger, but she forced herself to rise. The ancestral charms burned faintly in her palm, pulsing with a soft warmth that seemed alive, a tether to something beyond the forest. The Nyoka had not yet revealed itself fully, but its presence was palpable. Shadows slithered along the trees, stretching unnaturally, whispering in voices that were both hers and others she loved. One whispered, "You cannot trust him. He is mine." Another hissed, "You will fail." She tightened her grip on the charms and stepped toward the heart of the forest. The clearing she had seen before beckoned, lined with the remnants of old rituals. Scorched earth, broken bone charms, and dry herbs that rustled as if alive. Every footstep seemed to echo too long, as though the forest were expanding and folding around her. The first sign of the shapeshifter came as a whisper behind her, low and mocking. "Latifah!" She spun, heart hammering, and saw him, Kazi, standing just beyond the mist, his posture unervingly stiff, moving backward. Relief clashed with terror. She remembered Nyaru's warning. Trust your instincts, not your eyes. A sudden gust of wind threw the smoke from her incense into the air, forming spectral patterns that danced in the moonlight. The Nyoka hissed, imitating her dead grandmother's voice. "You abandoned him. You cannot save him." Latifah's knees buckled, but she pressed onward, chanting the protective words Nyaru had taught her. Each syllable forced a shimmer through the mist, forming a faint, circular barrier around her. From the shadows, figures emerged. Other Kazi-shaped forms, grotesque versions with backward-bending limbs, elongated fingers, and teeth that gleamed in the dim light. They lunged in flickers, never entirely visible, attacking the edges of her barrier. The forest seemed alive, pulsating with a rhythm that matched the beating of her heart. Latifah realized she could not rely on force alone. This was a battle of perception, intuition, and courage. She moved her drum in sweeping circles, calling out the ancestral rhythm taught by Nyaru. The vibrations reverberated through the soil, the trees, and even through the mist. The shapeshifter shrieked, a sound like breaking bones mixed with the wind, and the forms faltered. Then silence. The fog parted slightly, revealing a single figure. Kazi, standing perfectly still, eyes wide, the moonlight casting his shadow long and straight behind him. Relief surged, but instinct screamed danger. She approached, slowly, charms raised. And then it struck, something she had dreaded. His face flickered, stretching into a snarling, inhuman grin for a heartbeat, then back to Kazi's innocent visage. Latifah stumbled back, realizing the Nyoka was using every trick to exploit her grief, her memories, and her love for her brother. Every step forward was a risk, every heartbeat a trap. Latifah focused, chanting the ritual words louder, swinging the drum in wide arcs. Smoke from the incense curled upward, forming ancestral symbols glowing faintly in the moonlight. The Nyoka shrieked, then coalesced before her as a single horrific form. A mass of shadow, sinew, and bone, eyes glowing green, wearing parts of faces it had stolen. Its voice was 1,000 whispers layered into one. I am all you love. I am your fear. You cannot escape. She held her ground, heart hammering. I see you, she whispered, voice trembling but determined. And I know you are not my brother. The shapeshifter lunged, but Latifah was ready. She tossed incense into the center of the clearing, creating a ring of shimmering smoke. The Nyoka hissed, recoiling, its forms flickering as if burned by invisible fire. She beat the drum, each strike echoing in the forest, forcing the creature to manifest fully, revealing its true grotesque form. Twisted, skeletal eyes, glowing limbs bending in impossible angles. It screamed, a sound of centuries of rage and vengeance, and lunged at her. Latifah recited the final line of the ritual chant, planting her feet firmly, letting the ancestral energy course through her. The Nyoka convulsed, shrieking as it writhed and twisted, forced to retreat from the circle of power she had created. The forest fell silent, the air heavy with smoke and ash. Latifah opened her eyes. Kazi lay in the clearing, breathing but pale, the terror of the night still etched on his face. She rushed to him, relief washing over her, but then she noticed something subtle. His left hand twitched unnaturally, his eyes lingering a second too long on shadows behind her. A soft giggle, Kazi's laugh, yet layered with something alien, escaped his lips. Latifah froze, realizing with horror that the Nyoka may have been defeated, but it had left a piece of itself inside her brother. The dawn light barely penetrated the ancestral forest. Latifah carried Kazi through the mist, his small hand clutching hers, limp yet strangely heavy. Relief had no place in her chest. Every instinct screamed that the danger was not gone. The forest seemed to watch, every gnarled branch reaching like a skeletal hand, every rustle of leaves whispering the Nyoka's laughter. As they approached the village outskirts, the wind shifted, carrying faint drumbeats, not the rhythmic chant she had used, but something slower, sinister, mocking. Latifah's heartbeat quickened. Kazi walked beside her, head down, silent. She glanced at him. Everything appeared normal. His eyes met hers, soft, familiar, but a flicker, almost imperceptible, passed across his face. A grin too wide, teeth too sharp, eyes glimmering with green light for a fraction of a second. Latifah's throat tightened. She forced herself to focus, gripping the charms. The Nyoka was clever, patient. It could wait, bide its time, and strike when least expected. That night Latifah could not sleep. Shadows in the hut seemed too thick, curling along the walls, stretching unnaturally. She noticed Kazi humming a song they had never learned, a melody foreign yet achingly familiar. Her heart clenched. The hairs on her arms stood as the whispers returned, carried by a wind that seemed alive. I am always with you, always inside. She ventured outside, the moon casting twisted reflections across puddles. Each reflection flickered. Kazi's face, then another, monstrous, skeletal, grinning. She clutched the charms, chanting softly, but the shadows moved closer. She realized with a cold dread that the Nyoka's final trick was not confrontation, but deception. It had already imprinted itself into Kazi's being. Desperate, Latifah returned to the village elder. Nyara's face was grave, etched with lines of fear and wisdom. The ritual forced it out, he said, voice trembling, but only partially. The Nyoka can linger, hiding in what you love. It is patient. It waits for doubt, for fear, for weakness. You cannot see it, but it is there. Latifah felt the weight of that truth, heavier than the night air. She returned home, holding Kazi close, watching him sleep. Every twitch, every breath, was a reminder that the shapeshifter might already be woven into his soul. Weeks passed, each night a slow-burning torment. Shadows flickered across the walls, and every whisper, every laugh, every song seemed to twist slightly out of place. Latifah began noticing subtle differences. The way Kazi tilted his head, the way his eyes lingered too long on reflections, the faint green glimmer when he smiled. One night, a storm descended upon the village. Thunder rolled through the hills, lightning illuminating the huts in jagged flashes. Latifah clutched Kazi to her chest as a gust of wind threw open the hut door. The shadows outside twisted unnaturally. She could feel it, the Nyoka had returned. Kazi looked at her, eyes innocent. Almost. Then he smiled. And for the briefest instant, his face flickered, the familiar grin replaced by the creature's monstrous, skeletal mask. Latifah screamed, dropping the charms, the sound swallowed by the storm. Lightning struck a nearby tree, illuminating the reflection of a puddle beneath the window. She bent down instinctively and froze. The puddle reflected Kazi perfectly, yet his eyes glimmered green, and behind him, just a heartbeat later, a second pair of glowing eyes stared back at her from the shadows. Her heart raced. The wind whispered, "I am never far. I am within." Latifah realized the horrifying truth. The Nyoka could not be killed. It could only be held at bay, ever patient, waiting for the moment fear or doubt weakened her. The shapeshifter had become a permanent shadow in her life, wearing the face of the one she loved most. The camera of the mind lingers on the puddle's reflection, showing Kazi's face flicker. Normal, then grotesque, then normal again, as the storm raged outside. The final whisper carries through the thunder. "I am your brother, and I am not." The screen fades to black, leaving viewers with a chilling question. Is Kazi truly safe, or has the Nyoka already claimed him, lying dormant, waiting for its next strike? The story ends with ambiguity and dread. The shapeshifter remains, lying in wait, integrated into Kazi's being. The audience is left questioning the safety of the protagonist and her brother, a slow-burning terror that lingers beyond the story. If you thought that was terrifying, wait until you hear what lurks in the next village. Subscribe, if you dare.